we are going to be talking about creating Microsoft Teams apps with .NET. So in this session, we're going to just take a quick look at what it means to build Teams apps for .NET or with .NET, and maybe even why you would want to do that. And then I'll switch over to Visual Studio 2022, and I'll give you a quick demo on how you can quickly get started. And then we'll go over a little bit more about what we're doing next, and we're happy to take some questions for you. So as Jeff mentioned, I'm John Miller. I'm a program manager, and I'm working on the Teams developer experience, and I'm joined by Pierce. Pierce, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Pierce Bogan. I'm a technical product manager, lead at Microsoft, working on Teams developer experience with John. So yeah, I'm a remote employee based in Park City, Utah, and our team is full of other remote product managers. And for our team, Teams is really the center of our collaboration, right? I can collaborate with my colleagues in chat, in Teams, have meetings, and collaborate contextually across all the devices I might use in a given day, including my desktop machine, laptop at the coffee shop, and mobile device on the go. So the same is probably true for many of you in the audience as well. But what you may not know actually is that you can build apps for Teams. So today, like John said, we're going to be looking at, what even is a Teams application, why it's exciting and why you should be building for Teams and how you can get started. So I'll kick over to John to tell us what a Teams app even is.
Thanks, Pierce. So a Teams app can show UI, like shown here in this Contoso tab I have highlighted with this arrow. So this app provides a tab that shares a Kanban style UI that tracks this team's tasks, and it's shared in the development channel of this team. Something else you might want to do with an app is maybe you don't need a dedicated UI in a tab, but instead maybe you need a way to inform your team that something's happening or provide some conversational way for them to track something or get a workflow done. And a bot would be a good way to do that. So Teams apps can also provide an experience in a channel like this. Here, the Contoso app that we're discussing provides a bot inside of the Teams channel. And similarly to providing those experiences for Teams, I might also want to do or provide an experience just for myself. So this same Contoso app could provide a tab or a UI for just me. And here I have it pinned to the left side of my Teams client, which you can see from the arrow. That way I can navigate to it quickly. And then I can see a list of all the tasks that are assigned just to me. The same is true for the conversational workflows too. So you could provide a bot that's specific to a user. Here I have one just for myself, so I can click this conversational flow to see exactly what my tasks are and maybe ask questions about those tasks and maybe find what's at risk, etc.
So this is really cool, right? Because I can plug in apps where I'm already working. Like these all look like familiar things. I'm using chat today. I'm using tabs in my Teams channels and teams, and I can build apps that extend that UI for these different team services and fit into how me and my team are already collaborating.
Exactly. So really what you can do is you can build for teams or you can build for yourself or for individuals. And you can really optimize the workflow that you're doing as a team, and the channels is one way to do that. That's kind of what I showed there. So you might have some UI that your app wants to provide, and you can do that inside of a tab, and you can do that in tabs for teams, conversations, or individuals as well.
So you kind of told us a little bit about like what Teams apps are. Okay, so I can extend Teams app UI, and it kind of feels it's kind of cool because I can build apps that kind of feel native to my end users that already kind of meet them where they are. But I'm kind of curious, like, okay, that is a Teams app. There's a million ways I can build apps, a million platforms I can build apps for. Like, what makes Teams special and why would I build for Teams?
Yeah, good point. So I think to better understand the why, you can maybe take one step back and think about why Teams may exist. I know our team is globally distributed. We have team members I think covering every time zone now.
Yeah.
And we all work different time zones. So some of us are working during business hours and some are working after others' business hours. And so the collaboration that happens across there really happens inside a team. So we spend a lot of times in Teams. I think the first thing I do when I log into my computer for work in the morning is fire up Teams and get a list, catch up on conversations that have happened over the past 12 hours from folks that are working across time zones. So this type of diversity and distribution and changing is really kind of driving the way that we're working and collaborating. And then Teams, I think, can jump in specifically. I jumped ahead there. Specifically, the Teams platform can help provide an experience here. And so you can really start to think about how your workflows or your services might fit into where you're already spending a lot of your time. And for us, and for many, I think developers, is inside of Teams.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like one thing that's really, really cool for me about the Teams platform is if you build an app for Teams, your app runs everywhere Teams runs. And, I have a background in mobile development. And so like, I know that people are using multiple devices to get their job done in a given day. Like you're using, as I mentioned earlier, your mobile device, you're maybe on your laptop, you're maybe working on your desktop machine. And the really cool thing about Teams is not only that apps come with users after they install them on one of these surfaces, they're available everywhere, right? Like if I install, a Teams app on my desktop Teams client, it's immediately available for me to use on mobile client as well. And so one of the really cool challenges that I had when I was building mobile apps is it was really difficult to build that contextual kind of experience, right? Like I might have some content that I was working on desktop, but then suddenly it wasn't there when I went to mobile. And the cool thing about Teams is you kind of get that seamless contextual workflow as you move from device to device. And the apps are all there for all your users. Like your users are already there. And, you can meet them where they're already working. I think that's like such a crucial point. I know as developers, like we want our apps to be seen and found by our users. And when your users are already using Teams and you can not only just have an app, but plug an app into an existing workflow that your team's already using, that's a really great way to drive engagement of your app and to get, some really great usage of it. So that's something I really appreciate as a developer with the Teams platform.
We talked a little bit about maybe some of those scenarios. We can think about how we might connect our teams. I know how we connect our team using Microsoft Teams is really with some DevOps scenarios. I think that's the one I'm most familiar with. So we want to have some workflow that happens when something is triggered in GitHub or Azure DevOps. That pops into Teams where we're all already working. We can see a pull request come in, or we can see some type of discussion happening that might require some action from our team. Like we need to approve a pull request, or we need to review it, or we want to discuss it further. All these types of things can be front and center inside of Teams where we're already working. And that way we don't have to spend any time switching back and forth. So there's a couple different scenarios we've put on here to give you some idea, maybe to get you thinking about how you might bring kind of your workflows that you already do maybe somewhere else outside of Teams, and start to think about how we can integrate those using the Teams platform and save time. You don't have to context switch all the time. I think that's one of the big values we get out of it as a team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the really cool thing about Teams is like you can make Teams your own with the Teams platform, right? Some of that's going to be, hey, let's build some custom apps ourselves, right? Like we're going to talk about today. But there's even, amazing apps available in the Teams App Store that our team uses as well, like Power BI. Like, okay, great. I might want to, jump in and see, where we're at with our product metrics. How's our health of our services that we're building, that sort of thing. Okay, great. I can pin a Power BI tab with the Power BI app inside of our Teams channel, and it's right there. All of our resources are right there. They're easy to access. We just onboarded somebody to the team last week, which we're really excited to have them join. But one of the cool things there is like, hey, all of the stuff that we used to have this giant doc of things you have to go like learn, it's just pinned as Teams tabs, right? Like we have a wiki. Okay, it's pinned as a Teams tab. We have the Power BI app. Okay, it's pinned as a Teams tab. We have the Azure DevOps workflows. It's there. And so like, it's really helped our team as well with like even things like onboarding in ways we really didn't appreciate when we first started to embrace this platform. So there's just so much you can do to make Teams your own for your team specifically and your organization.
Great point. That reminds me on our team. I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out how we could share customer insights. So we have these discussions with developers like yourselves, that are the folks that are watching, and that's really how we kind of drive what we want to do in the project. And I wanted to be able to share that feedback with the whole team in a way that, everyone could see it. Emails get lost, and other, people don't see everything. So I thought, why not make a Teams app with this? So I created a Teams app that just made a simple UI that I could type in some of the notes and key takeaways from these discussions. And hey, this customer had these pain points, and this is what developers are saying that they want and we need. And then that posts directly to a Teams channel, and then everyone can see it and we can discuss it and talk about it. And I'm really excited to continue that project, and hopefully that does help kind of keep everything front and center, and we can keep the feedback there. So it's good, great point.
Yeah, you can also have like conversations around stuff too, right? Like I think one of the challenges before Teams was like you would have to go to like these other apps, you might collaborate there, and then you come back inevitably to have a conversation around like a piece of content. Like, hey, this is the product metric we're talking about. Why might this be the case? Like you're constantly passing links back and forth. And it's really cool because you can just have a conversation about that thing in line around it. And that's something that I think is really unique to Teams that I know our team has really appreciated having.
So far, I only shared a couple of things early on in the screenshots, and it's really focused around a UI that your app can provide or some type of conversational flow. And we were talking, those are tabs and bots. And then the entry points of where you might discover those things or put them for your app are either in channels or for individuals, which we're calling personal apps. But just to give you an idea that there's a lot of other things you can do with Teams. We won't dive into all of them now, but we have lots of documentation and resources for this. And really, what the takeaway I think here is that any kind of way you want to interact with Teams or the way you want to expose your service to individuals or your team members in channels or group chats or one-on-ones, there's many extensibility points here that you can integrate with. So once you've created an app and you want to share it, there's kind of three main ways. If you want to share it with the world, then you can publish it directly to the Teams store. If you want to share it with just your business unit or your company inside of your own kind of Teams environment, then you can publish just to your company, and then you can kind of manage that through policies of who gets which app. Maybe everyone gets the app, or maybe only certain teams do, or certain individuals. Or if you just want to share it with a specific team inside of a channel, then you can also do that. So there's pretty much any kind of way that you want to share, we support that.
Yeah, and I mean, like we talked about earlier, when an end user installs your app, that's immediately available contextually across all of their Teams instances wherever Teams runs, and that's like such a powerful scenario. And I mean, you hit on the policies, right? Like I think that's also something that's kind of cool too. Is like I know I work at Microsoft. We have so many apps, dude. I can barely keep track of all the apps that our team is shipping, even just for internal use, right? And I think one of the really cool things that Teams policies enables is I can say, hey, everybody in sales, you get like our suite of sales apps, right? Everybody in supply chain, you get the supply chain apps. And I know like getting everyone the right apps is a big challenge for many of the customers we talk to. And I think that's one of the really cool things about Teams, I think, is that you can make sure that the right users get the right apps in a place where they already work.
A great point. Something else I might take for granted there as well is if you have an update to that app, your users can get it live, like as soon as you're available to publish. There wouldn't be any process there, that's third party necessarily. No app store review processes and things like that. So that might be a benefit to you. As I launch my mobile device and I can pick up right where I left off. I know I like to use an app in Teams that helps remind me of messages that I may have missed, and it's very convenient when I can enable start that action on mobile and then jump over to my desktop maybe the next day and see all those notifications, and I can kind of pick up back and forth. Okay, so let's talk a little bit of how we might get started as a .NET developer. And so that really is going to be about the Teams Toolkit. So we're excited to talk about that. This is something our team's been working on. Right now it's a Visual Studio extension. It's currently in preview. And what it helps you do is get started quickly with Teams apps, and it helps simplify some of the authentication pieces that you'll most likely want to do inside of a Teams app for single sign-on, and it also can help assist you in running and debugging bots locally. So what we've focused on right now with this toolkit is really kind of the ceremony that's necessary to set up a Teams app. So lots of configuration is typically needed. You could always do these things, but it required a lot of manual steps. We had lots of documentation for it. And we got feedback, hey, this is really painful. So we found a way that we could help automate this and make it configurable for you. And if you want to take a look at it, there's an aka.ms/teams-toolkit-vs link here, and that'll take you right to the VS Marketplace to install the extension. So I think we'll jump into a demo. And a couple things, if you want to try the Teams Toolkit, there's a couple prerequisites. One, you'll most likely want to join the M365 developer program, and what this does is it gives you a way to set up a Teams environment that's like a sandbox for you. So you're the administrator of it. You can enable side-loading apps, which is something you'll need to be able to do, and you'll be in control of it, and it won't affect your main business or organization's Teams environment. And then obviously you need Visual Studio and the Teams Toolkit extension. So let me switch over to Visual Studio. Okay, so here I've started Visual Studio, and I've done create new project, and just want to show you what the Teams Toolkit provides. It provides a template called the Microsoft Teams app, and we can go ahead and name and select where we want it, just like anything else. When we click create, this is really where the toolkit is, and I'll expand this a little bit. I bumped up my font size, so I'll make that a little larger for you. And we have two options here. So these are really the capabilities that we talked about earlier. We can choose to do a tab, we can choose to add a bot to our Teams app, and we can choose which M365 account that we want to register this with. So by default, this is using the identities that you've added inside of Visual Studio. So I have my Microsoft account here. I also have my M365 developer account out of the Visual Studio, so I can select that in here as well. And then when you click create here, what's going to happen is we will register that app with the Teams developer portal. We will configure the Azure AD registration that's needed for single sign-on. And if you select bot, we'll also do the same things for the bot application, and we'll make sure all those pieces are connected, all the endpoints are set up. And so that's all kind of that ceremony I talked about. That was lots of manual steps before. So I'll just jump over to a project I've already created so we don't have to wait for that. And I'll enable that. So let me make this out here. So here is a project that I have created here for this demo. Let me pin this. Okay, so let me just clean this up a little bit so we can focus on one thing at a time. So what we have here is a Blazor server application. So our template is a Blazor server application. So I think a lot of this should look pretty familiar. It's basically the same as the Blazor server template, but we've added a couple things in here for the Teams Toolkit. So we have some packages in here, which is the Teams FX packages. This is what provides the authentication and single sign-on support. And you can see on line 32, we have added this service to the project. And we have some components are for the sample page, which I'll show you in a moment. And there's some controllers here for the bot responses. And there's a couple pages for just kind of the default of what a Teams app requires. So all the things to set up for a Teams app are already in there for you. And as soon as you create the project, you're ready to hit F5 and show it in Teams.
Cool. So basically, like what I'm hearing from you is like if I'm a Blazor developer, this should all look very familiar to me because it's just a Blazor app, right? And we're using all the Blazor constructs, and all those skills that you already have as a Blazor developer are immediately applicable to me as a Teams developer too. And I also saw that auth thing. That was pretty cool, right? Like I know as a developer, I'm always scared of auth. Like auth is very scary. There's a lot I have to understand. But it looks like for me, like Teams FX and the Teams Toolkit like really simplifies SSO down to where I don't even really need to do anything. It sounds like the template and a lot of the configuration burden for me as a developer, which I've always like struggled to understand how all the pieces all fit together in the code I need to write. All of that's totally taken care of for me. Is that right?
Yeah, we've tried to set all that up so you have kind of can hit the ground running with based on the feedback we've got of things that developers always want to do in Teams apps. And since you're running your app inside of Teams, it makes sense to have some context about that user. It's already authenticated via Teams, so there's some information we can provide to you there, and you don't have to kind of reset all that up yourself. So what that means is when you launch your app inside of Teams or a user launches your app, they won't get another dialog to log in and SSO.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thing, right? So they won't have to go through that single sign-on flow again. It'll already be set up kind of silently for you.
Love it.
All right, so I think we can jump into, so I guess we'll go back. So this is the app running in here. This is our tab. So this is the UI that the components in the sample project that's included in the template displays. So we get a little bit, it knows about me running in here. And also there's some descriptions here about how you can get the current user. And if I click this authorize button, I've set a breakpoint in one of my components. And so here we can debug in Visual Studio just like we would any Blazor project. So we're running our Teams in my M365 developer program in the browser, and I'm able to debug here just how I always would in any type of Blazor application. And then if I also, let's see here, one other thing I can do. Let me stop this, and I'll just start without debugging. And we can take a look at, in .NET 6, we have the hot reload. So that also works here. So if I run this project and then maybe bring up, let's see.
So what I'm hearing from you is like, this is really cool. Everything that the Teams Toolkit provide builds on everything I already know as a .NET developer. All those skills are transferable, and I can immediately start building apps for Teams because, Teams apps, in this case, this is just a Blazor app. And then all of the things that, I know and love about Visual Studio, hot reload, the debugging support, file new project, we just seamlessly plug into those things. And so all those expectations that you have for those experiences just carry forward, which is pretty cool.
Exactly right. Just edit the component here for this page and hit save. And then you can see it updates on the right-hand side here. And I didn't have to kind of reinstall my app or do anything different. So I think that kind of helps with the kind of development cycle here. So you can kind of work on this Teams project and kind of see if you're developing a UI application, then you kind of get that same great developer experience you're expecting, but you're running directly inside of Teams.
Awesome.
Great. Okay, so let's jump back over. Let me minimize these things. And we'll go back to the slides here. There's our demo of Teams Toolkit. And something else I want to mention too is the Teams Toolkit project template also includes some Blazor components that make use of Fluent UI, the Fluent UI Blazor components. And in case you missed it, this is a project that we worked on with the Blazor folks and the FAST team at Microsoft. And this is based on feedback we've heard from .NET developers that they want to use Fluent UI with .NET. And so we have this project on GitHub that gives you Blazor components that wrap the Fluent UI web components. So you can provide a Fluent UI experience directly in your Blazor apps without having to do much work other than use this project. So we have some more work to do to make this something that provides an out-of-the-box experience for Teams apps, but it's ready to use today. You can go ahead and install it, and it will get you most of the way there. And excited to hear what you think about it. So make sure you check it out. What's next for Teams Toolkit? So we'll bring Teams Toolkit to VS 2022. That's what I demoed today. So we'll be publishing that. And we're also going to start focusing on how you might bring your existing .NET web apps to Teams. So if you're running any type of ASP.NET Core app, how do you bring that to Teams using Teams Toolkit, not just Blazor applications?
So you're saying like if I already have a .NET web application and I'm like, this app, it would be great in Teams. You're saying basically like what we have on the roadmap here is I can take existing experiences I've already built and bring those into Teams platform. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Cool.
And then earlier we showed what, all the extensibility points of the Teams platform. Right now, the Teams Toolkit supports tabs and bot experiences. And so we want to be able to support all of those capabilities. So if you're a .NET developer and you want to bring your app to Teams in any of the ways that are possible, then you should be able to do that with Teams Toolkit. And there's a lot of other cool things that we've been discussing that aren't listed here. So, I encourage you to help us build Teams Toolkit. You can visit the GitHub repo, which is officedev/TeamsFX. And that's really the main repository for the TeamsFX project, which includes Teams Toolkit and lots of the tooling that supports it. And so you can start a discussion there, create an issue, and really build with us. I think with that, what I really trying to say with this is that if you're a .NET developer, you're also a Teams app developer. And that's really the vision we have for the Teams Toolkit, is to build on top of the tools and frameworks and technologies that you're already using, so that way you can quickly and easily build Teams applications. That's all I have for you. Thanks for joining. If you would like to share some feedback with us, so if you're interested in building Teams apps, or maybe you're already building Teams apps, then please visit this aka.ms/ttk-session feedback link. It's just a quick survey. I think there's a few questions and an opportunity to share your contact information with us, and then our team can reach out directly. And your feedback really helps us drive the future of Teams Toolkit. So we appreciate that. Thank you. And is there any questions that we can go over?
All right. Hey, John and Pierce, it's Jeff Fritz over here in studios. Thank you so much. That was a fantastic session. I've been using Teams and looking around there, and as I get into more stuff, you're wetting my whistle here for wanting to build things in Teams. But I'm looking at some of the other things that we can do with Teams now, and Hutan here actually points something out, and it gets me thinking, now that Teams is integrated with Windows 11, can I use Teams Toolkit to build a plugin that works in the Windows 11 Teams? What do you think?
Great question. So not today. But we're open to hearing your feedback. So if it's something you want to do, get in touch with us, get in touch with me, and I'd love to hear kind of what exactly you want to do, and we'll be, happy to take that into consideration. And that's really how we drive our roadmap.
All right, Hutan, make sure you reach out to John and Pierce there. They're going to help you out. We have a question here, and it kind of leads into something, John, that you were talking about. Harry asks, is there any special guidance or tips or tricks for integrating a web application within MS Teams? We can already embed a tab, but is there a recommended way to allow a web app to know it's being hosted inside of Teams?
Yeah, I think at the lowest level, you can take a look at the Teams FX project and the Teams Toolkit and what we're doing. And the next thing you could do is, if you want to do something even more basic than that, then you could take a look at the Microsoft Teams JS library. And that's one of the components that we build on top of in the Teams Toolkit. And just adding that library to your project will allow you to get some context about Teams and find out if you're running inside of Teams, find out a little bit about the tabs and the channels and things like that. So I think that's probably the first place to start.
And to add on to what John was saying, I think the cool thing about Teams applications is they really exist on a continuum, right? I can take my existing stuff and bring it into Teams and get immediate value, and I can incrementally add more and more parts of Teams. Okay, I want to know what channel I'm in. Great, I can do that. I want to know who the user is. Great, I can do that. I want to send a notification when someone does something in my app. Great, I can do that. And so this incremental adaptability of Teams as a platform is one of my favorite parts about working on this team and this product.
Yep, and we'll be working to make that simpler for .NET developers in the Teams Toolkit. That's one of the things I mentioned on the kind of what's next, is what it means to bring your existing app into Teams and improving that incremental adoption story.
Awesome. We've got a bunch more questions here. I don't think we're going to be able to get to them all, but I want to make sure I touch on Daniel's question here. For folks that want to get started, what's the best way to set up their Teams development environment?
The best way is to join the M365 developer program. It's totally free, and that will allow you to create an account and create your own Teams sandbox environment to deploy to. So when I was running the demo today, that's what I was running it in. I created my own Teams sandbox. You have the option to fill in some dummy data, like dummy users and conversations, so that way you can maybe interact with those things and with your app, make things a little more interesting and test out what it might actually look like in a real environment. And you can kind of manage that subscription that's free. You can manage when you want that to exist and not exist. So I think that's the best way.
All right. Thank you so much, John and Pierce. Fantastic session. There's a couple more questions out there on Twitter. Hey, guys, would you do me a favor and take a look out there and see if you can help out folks that have asked questions with #.NETConf and help them out with their Teams development. They're really interested out there. In fact, we've even got a group of interns that are tuning in and watching, and they're all excited watching .NETConf together on Teams. We hope you're having a fantastic time watching.